We all travel for different reasons, right? But what happens when we find ourselves in one of the world's most sacred places? Suddenly, the lines get kind of blurry. Are you there for a deep spiritual quest? Or, let's be honest, for that perfect Instagram shot? So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a question that's way more complicated than it sounds. What really separates a pilgrim from a tourist?
Seriously, just think back for a second. Have you ever been to a place like that? A world-famous cathedral, maybe a temple or a shrine? Could be Notre Dame in Paris, or a beautiful mosque on your last vacation. The point is, you were there. You were standing on what is, for many, truly sacred ground.
So what were you, a tourist or a pilgrim? Now you might think you have an easy answer, but I'm telling you, that line between seeking salvation and just seeking a great photo is way, way blurrier than you'd imagine. We're going to unpack exactly why that simple distinction is falling apart and what it says about modern travel, faith, and maybe even a little bit about ourselves.
All right, so to get started, let's lay down the basics, the classic textbook definitions. For a long time, this whole thing seemed pretty simple, pretty clear-cut.
Okay, so on one hand, you've got the pilgrim. Their journey is all about spiritual reasons, right? They're seeking enlightenment, salvation. It's driven by faith and a sense of duty. And then, on the other hand, you have the tourist. They're traveling for totally secular reasons, pleasure, curiosity, just a break from the 9 to 5. It seems so simple, doesn't it? One is sacred, the other is just for fun. But, as we're about to see, that clear line starts to get real fuzzy when you look a little closer.
Yeah, that simple black and white view got a major reality check back in 1992. A researcher named V.L. Smith came along and said, hey, this isn't a binary choice. Instead, they proposed this idea of a continuum. So think of it less like an on-off light switch and more like a dimmer dial or a volume slider. You can be anywhere in between. And get this, a traveler's motivation can actually slide back and forth along that spectrum even on the same trip.
So if it's a spectrum, what's pushing us one way or the other? To really get that, we have to zoom out and ask an even bigger question. Why do we travel in the first place? What are we really looking for?
Well, sociologist Eric Cohen actually broke this down into 5 modes of the tourist experience. It often starts simple, right? Like recreational. You just want to chill out and have some fun. Or diversionary. You're just trying to escape the boring daily grind. But then it can get deeper. You might start searching for more authentic, experiential moments in other cultures. That can lead to experimental travel, where you're trying out alternative lifestyles or spiritual ideas. And finally, you get to the deepest level, existential.
And this is the kicker. That final mode, the existential traveler, well, that's basically a pilgrim. This is someone who is fully committed to a spiritual center that's not part of their everyday world. So right there, at the very peak of this model of tourism, we find the pilgrim. It's where the two paths completely merge.
Okay, so picture this. You've got people from every single point on that spectrum. You've got the casual, recreational tourist just looking for a good time. You've got the deeply committed existential pilgrim, and you've got literally everyone in between. And they all descend on the exact same place at the exact same time. What do you think happens?
Well, you get conflict. And I'm not just talking about fighting for a parking spot. We're talking about fundamental clashes. Is this a sacred space for quiet prayer? Or is it a 5-star tourist attraction? Who should get priority, the person here to worship or the person who bought a ticket? This friction pops up everywhere, between pilgrims and tourists, and even between all the visitors and the locals who have to live with it all.
Believe it or not, there's actually an academic term for this, heritage dissonance. It's basically a fancy way of saying there's a huge disagreement over what a place means. It's a battle for the soul of the site. And yeah, when one group's sacred heritage becomes another group's perfect selfie background, you're going to have some serious tension.
All right, so we've seen how messy it can get. Now let's circle back to that original simple divide we talked about and just blow it up. We've already said the line is blurry, but what if? What if that line was never really there at all?
Let's really push on this. Is trying to separate people into these 2 boxes, pilgrim and tourist, even a useful thing to do anymore?
Check out this argument. It's a game changer for some researchers. They say that by the very definition of traveling away from your home, you are a tourist, period. Your motivation, whether it's spiritual or just for fun, doesn't change the basic act of what you're doing. So, under this lens, a person traveling to a shrine to pray for their soul is still, technically, a religious tourist.
And don't think for a second this is some new 21st century idea. Come on, let's go way back to the 1300s. Think about Chaucer's Canterbury Tales.
Were those pilgrims on a journey of pure, silent, spiritual devotion? No way. They were telling raunchy stories, socializing, having a good time. This blend of the sacred and the secular, of piety and pleasure, has been a part of pilgrimage for, well, forever.
And you can see this same dance between commerce and faith playing out right now. Take the famous Knox Shrine in Ireland. People describe a bazaar-like atmosphere there, with souvenir shops everywhere. But at the same time, you have the Catholic Church officially trying to ban souvenir markets from being inside actual churches. They're trying to draw a line in the sand, but it's a constant negotiation, a real push and pull.
And just think about the sheer scale of modern faith. I mean, look at India's Kumbh Mela festival. You can get up to 15 million people gathering for a single bathing ritual. 15 million. Can we seriously say that every single one of those people is there for purely spiritual reasons? Of course not. It's got to be a wild mix of genuine faith, cultural tradition, family obligation, and yeah, just being there for the incredible spectacle of it all.
Which brings us right into the modern age, where massive global forces, things like speed, scale, and screens, are totally reshaping sacred travel.
Just look at the money involved. The Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca is one of the most profound spiritual duties in Islam. It also generates something like $8 billion in tourism revenue every single year. That's a huge number. It shows just how deeply faith and modern global commerce are woven together now. We're talking luxury hotels, all-inclusive travel packages, a whole massive industry.
And this whole thing is only speeding up. Globalization means that some international shrines can become way more famous than local ones. Cheap flights make it possible for millions more people to make these long-distance journeys. And of course, the internet. Religious sites now have websites and social media acting like a digital welcome mat for a global audience. And with projections showing international travel hitting 1.8 billion by 2030, you can bet the pressure on these sacred places is just going to keep on growing.
But here's a really interesting twist. It's not like these big global sites are just erasing the local ones. There's a cool term for this, glocalization. It means that while people are adopting global trends, like flying halfway across the world for a pilgrimage, they're also continuing to value and visit their traditional, local, and national shrines. It's not an either-or situation. It's a both-and.
So, where does that leave us? We've torn down the old labels, we've looked at all these massive modern forces. So how should we think about these sacred journeys today?
Well, maybe we just need a new term altogether. So many travelers today are looking for meaning, but in a way that's, less dogmatic. They might not follow a strict religion, but they're definitely on a quest for something. Maybe a term like spiritual tourism actually does a better job of capturing this complicated, modern search for something bigger than ourselves.
And all of this leaves us with one big question to chew on. Maybe asking, are you a pilgrim or a tourist, is just the wrong question. Maybe the real question we should be asking is this. In a world that's in constant motion, what actually makes a journey sacred? Is it the intention you bring with you? Is it the deep history of the place itself? Or is it the change you feel inside when you're finally there? That's definitely something to think about next time you pack your bags.